Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
Outside of Aaron Rodgers possibly being a vice presidential candidate, this offseason should have been last year's offseason for the New York Jets. Also, UConn may be the top seed in the NCAA tournament, but the bracket committee did them absolutely no favors. Most people still think they're going to beat that gauntlet, though. Today's episode brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first ticket purchase. I'm Peter Bukowski, starting your day with the can't-miss stories and biggest debates in sports. You're Locked On Sports Today.
Searching all major sports. Found.
Let's start with the biggest story.
The New York Jets are loading up to make another run, though this time not just signing friends of Aaron Rodgers or players that once had a conversation with Aaron Rodgers about something we probably don't want to talk about, frankly. The latest, Mike Williams, a one-year deal that could be worth up to $15 million, plus future Hall of Famer Tyron Smith to man that left tackle spot if he can stay healthy. John Butchko from Locked On Jets joins me now. And John, a very different offseason this year compared to last year for the New York Jets, but hope springs still eternal in a lot of ways, at least for this season. What do you make of this offseason approach this time around?
I look at it and I say, this is the offseason the Jets should have had a year ago. They should have been bringing in like these high upside guys. No, look, these are both signings that have some degree of risk. Mike Williams is coming off an ACL. Tyron Smith's had issues staying on the field the last couple of years, but these are both guys who can be high impact players. And you said it perfectly. Last year, the Jets were bringing in guys who were just like Aaron Rodgers' friends. You know, they weren't really on paper. They said they were all in. They said they were loading up, but they weren't really bringing in guys who moved the needle. And this year, I mean, yeah, these are risks, but these are calculated risks, and these are risks with high upside. These are risks that could make the team a lot better. And you know, I was looking at the wide receiver landscape, and you know, if you look at the way things have gone the last week or so, Mike Williams was a guy the Jets really needed to sign, and I think they got him at a pretty reasonable price. And I think you could say the same with Tyron Smith when you look at the deal he got. It's a heavily incentive laden contract. So these are risks, but they're calculated risk, and they're risks that if they pan out, they're really going to pan out.
This all hinges on Aaron Rodgers, and he is apparently no longer going to be a vice presidential candidate, such that he ever was. Maybe we'll never know how close he was to actually doing that. But this doesn't work if Aaron Rodgers is not some version of Aaron Rodgers that we've seen lately. Given the current construction of the team, understanding he's going to be better than Zach Wilson was last year, what level right now do you think he needs to play out for them to get to where they want to be?
I think the Smith signing more than anything changes that, because my biggest fear with Rodgers is that, you know, he's as smart as he ever was. I think the arm is close to being as good as it's been. You know, I mean, I think maybe there's been a little bit of deterioration in the arm strength, but not a ton. The big issue with Rodgers is that the mobility is not going to be what it used to be. And I think, you know, you kind of saw that. You can speak to this better than I could, but it seemed like even the last couple of years in Green Bay, like he wasn't quite able to move the way he did in the past. Well, now he's coming off an Achilles injury at 40. Yeah. I mean, he's going to be a pocket passer from this point forward. So, which meant the Jets need to build a strong offensive line in front of him, because I think if you can protect him, he's going to still play at a high level. And, you know, not just Tyron Smith, but trading to get Morgan Moses back, a guy the Jets are familiar with. He was their right tackle in 2021, still playing at a high level. It gives you a chance, because, you know, I don't think Rodgers is going to play at the MVP level. I think if he's like a top 10 kind of guy, if you put the right pieces around him, and Williams contributes to this as well, you don't need him to carry as much as the load as maybe you did a year ago. Like heading into last season, I felt like Rodgers needed to be, you know, vintage Aaron Rodgers to make it work with the guys the Jets were running out there.
Yeah.
Now they have some pieces to make his life a little bit easier, and he's not going to have to do quite as much. He's still going to have to play at a high level, though. And, you know, if he shows a lot of decline, the Jets are going to be in trouble. But when you have Smith blocking for you, you know, solidifying that offensive line along with Morgan Moses on the other side, and you have two receivers you can throw to like Garrett Wilson and Mike Williams, Rodgers doesn't need to be at quite as high of a level now, because other guys can kind of pick up the slack.
We have heard varying reports and varying numbers about how long Aaron Rodgers wants to play. That probably factors in here. But what constitutes success, and maybe more importantly for someone like Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh, what constitutes failure right now as we stay understanding we haven't had the draft and there's still, you know, plenty of time to go here. But as we sit here today, you know, late March, What is a success for this season for the Jets?
Well, I think the question, what's success for the Jets and what's success for Robert Saleh and Joe Douglas, are to have two different answers. I think for Saleh and Douglas, if they make the playoffs, the way the owner operates, I think they're going to get extended. I think if you're looking at this objectively for the Jets, I mean, you did not make a trade for Aaron Rodgers. You did not push all this cap space to the future to go, 9-8, 10-7 and make a wild card. Is it Super Bowl? Do you have to win the Super Bowl? I mean, I think you can make an argument, but I look, if you want to say they can make a Super Bowl and it's a success, okay. You want to even say okay, they get to the AFC Championship game, maybe you run it back next year. But I think the bar is pretty high. I think there has to be some sort of deep playoff run this year for the Jets to call this a success, because you need to rearrange your entire franchise around Aaron Rodgers to. I understand the Jets have missed the playoffs 13 straight years, but in reality, the Jets do not need to rearrange everything around Aaron Rodgers to make the playoffs. I think that you get Aaron Rodgers because you want to go on a run, and I think that should be the expectation.
Stay up to date all year on the New York Jets by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Jets on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Thanks for making Locked On Sports Today your first listen. Coming up, the committee did UConn absolutely no favors. Before we get to that, the newest member of the Saints already has health concerns. With last-minute tickets, all-in prices, and their best price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Gametime has plenty of last-minute tickets to your favorite team. They also make it easy to get in the gate with flash deals and zone deals. Gametime makes it easy to find and buy tickets for every kind of event in your area. They've got views from all the seats in the venue. They've got the lowest price, guaranteed. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Right now, new Gametime users get $20 off your first purchase with code Locked On. Terms apply. Just download the Gametime app and use code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, the lowest price, guaranteed. As you know, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel, Locked On Sports Today. Baseball fans, mark your calendars for March 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern for the best Major League Baseball season preview coming exclusively to Locked On Sports Today. On March 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern, be the first to get local insight from the MLB experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Find it on March 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern on the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Saints defensive end Chase Young is expected to miss part of training camp after undergoing a neck procedure, according to reports. Young signed a one-year deal worth a guaranteed $13 million following his visit with the Saints on Monday. The Saints were among the teams aware of the neck issue and felt comfortable moving ahead with the signing. Young missed the Washington Commanders season opener last season because of a neck stinger sustained in the first preseason game. He played the next week and did not miss another game in 2023. The Browns sure love to hand out guaranteed money. They're locking down Jerry Jeudy for the next 3 years.
The Cleveland Browns and Jerry Jeudy have agreed to a contract extension, 3 years, $41 million guaranteed. Possibilities of the deal to get up to $58 million. The Cleveland Browns have tried to acquire Jerry Jeudy many times over a 2-year period. This is obviously a player that Andrew Berry has been enamored with, along with Coach Kevin Stefanski. And we've seen this before in the past with players. Takk McKinley, if you remember a couple of years ago. Obviously, Jadeveon Clowney was a player they were always trying to chase down. Some of these work. Some of them don't. What they value in Jerry Jeudy is his age, about 25 years old, going into the 5th year. I think a lot of what's gone into this. Now, if you go to that Browns manifesto from back in the day from Paul DePodesta, identify and pay early. The Browns obviously clearly identified Jerry Jeudy many, many years ago. And now this is a player they absolutely wanted to get into the fold.
On the hardwood, the T-Wolves were trying to keep up with the Nuggets.
Wolves coming off that season sweep last night over the Jazz, feeling good as far as, wins go. But this team is just going through it when it comes to big name injuries. No Cat, we know that. Still no Rudy Gobert. He's missed 3 games now. And now, if that's not bad enough, no Naz Reid. He missed the second half last night with concussion-like symptoms. So no one really knew what to expect tonight. In fact, I think a lot of people were kind of gearing up, buckling up for a blowout. I mean, you never know what you're going to get, but this was one of, I know they lost here and we'll get into it. But one of the games of the year, though, if you're just a fan of good basketball. One of the best games the Wolves have been a part of this year. Nuggets go on a 14-3 run to end the first half. They score 70 heading into the locker room. Wolves fight back, though. Outscore Denver 29-17 in the third quarter, thanks to Anthony Edwards just putting the team on his back once again. In the end, though, the T-Wolves, despite just an A-plus effort, they fall short, 115-112.
The Magic had a golden opportunity to gain ground in the East.
This is Philip Rossman-Reich, the host of Locked On Magic, and Mission 83 is officially accomplished. Your Orlando Magic have clinched their spot in the play-in tournament at the very least. Obviously, there's a whole lot more that the Magic want to accomplish and a whole lot more the Magic want to do here, fighting for the 4th seed. So there's a long way to go here with 13 games left in the season, but it is worth taking a step back and recognizing this accomplishment. The Magic have gone from a 22-win team to a 34-win team to now 41 wins, guaranteeing at least a 500 record for just the second time since Dwight Howard left in 2012. Like I said, it is worth recognizing these small accomplishments, but it is also worth saying they accomplished this tonight by doing exactly what Magic basketball is supposed to do. They played hard-nosed defense, dominating the Charlotte Hornets and leading by as much as 41 points in the victory. It was a complete rout. Yes, it was only a 20-point win in the end, but a complete rout as the Magic can officially say they are a postseason team. Playoffs, here we come.
The Pelicans were looking to keep pace in the West, while in Brooklyn,
the Pelicans blow out the Brooklyn Nets 104-91. Just another victory for New Orleans, who's now only a half game back of the Los Angeles Clippers for the 4th seed. This team is fun right now. You saw that Zion alley-oop lob from Najee Marshall. We'll talk about it in a second, but this team is clicking. And you know they're clicking because they have won as many games this season as of now as they did all of last year. They had 42 wins last year, 42 wins right now. There's still 14 games left to go. There's a chance that they could get to 50 wins. And this team right now is kind of the talk of the NBA. This team is not only just kind of national media darlings right now, which you rarely see from them. And the reason they're that is because they're locked in.
UConn has had a really good season and deserved to be the top overall seed in the NCAA tournament. The committee also saw fit to give the top seed the toughest competition.
Real talk. We've seen it twice, and I sure ain't going to bet on it that we're going to see it again this year. But for kicks and giggles, Isaac, for kicks and giggles, Andy, we'll actually talk about it. The 1 seed is UConn over in the East bracket. The 16 seed is Stetson. And let's go ahead and talk about that 8 and 9 seed as well. Florida Atlantic being in that 8 spot and 9 with Northwestern. I probably am going to get a thumbs up from both you, Andy, and you, Isaac, about that 1 and 16 and UConn moving on. But just to make sure, tell me your thoughts on the 1 and 16 as well as the 8 and 9.
Let's put a number on it, Tanitra. The one seeds are 150-2 all time against 16. So yeah, big thumbs up.
Yep, 100%. UConn's going to advance here. Shout out to Stetson for being in the big dance. It's been a long time since they're here, but they're not going to get much of a chance here.
Yeah, Andy, I got to agree with you guys on that as well. Andy, what about FAU? You see them advancing, or are you giving that nod to Northwestern?
You know, I love Boo Buie at Northwestern, really talented guard. I like veteran guard play, but FAU's got a lot of it as well. John L. Davis, Elijah Martin, Dusty May, fantastic coach. To me, give me FAU. Sets up a nice matchup between two teams that were in the Final Four last year, between UConn and FAU in that round of 32.
Absolutely. Same for me, Tanitra. I love the experience of FAU. Elijah Martin, whom Andy mentioned, is one of my favorite athletes in the tournament. Is this Dusty May's last ride in Boca Raton? We're going to find out. But I love getting 2 of these Final Four teams from last year squaring off in round 2.
Because when you think about UConn, it's like, you're just going to travel down to Brooklyn, not a big deal. And that's one of the positives and one of the pluses of being that number 1 seed overall. You kind of put in position to hopefully get you to the Final Four. So that'll make for interesting, even if FAU does get there. They're talking about traveling to Brooklyn. And then, of course, you've got the next round, as we called it here, San Diego State and Auburn will be in Spokane. And then, of course, if it goes BYU or Illinois, or however that one goes, we're looking at Omaha. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how those locales and those fan bases traveling for support, how that could impact how those teams play as well. So we'll definitely be taking a look there.
Yeah, it's interesting, Tanitra, that whole bottom half of the East is all in Omaha, both of those pods
I
together.
thought that was intriguing, too.
Yeah, and so they would have already seen, whoever comes out of those 2 games will already know what they have as they head head off to Boston the next weekend for the East Regional. So that's going to be really interesting. Something that we neglected to mention here so far is that 4 of the 6 Power Conference tournament champions are all in this bracket. As we already talked about, 3 of last year's Final Four teams are all in this bracket. So a lot of postseason experience, going to be really interesting in this East bracket. We'll see what it means for the reigning national champion UConn Huskies.
Get all the information you need to win your bracket by checking out our NCAA tournament preview by subscribing to Locked On Sports today and Locked On College Basketball on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Coming up, UConn will rise to that difficult occasion. Say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tournament. Whether you're betting on a big upset or a 1 seed, it's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines. You can even pick a future bet who's going to win it all. UConn heavy favorites over Stetson in their first round matchup. FanDuel has them as 26.5-point favorites. 16 seeds have been beating #1 seeds recently, though. 2 in the last 5 years. But looks like the Huskies probably pretty safe to advance here. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. With UConn getting the veritable group of death, does that cast doubt on their title hopes? Not so fast, says our Locked On UConn host, Mark Zanetta.
Why is it good that UConn got the toughest bracket? Do you think he uses that as motivation?
Absolutely. Well, Hurley's going to use anything as motivation. You don't need to research far for that, but they're going to get tested early and often. And I think there is something to be said for this time of year, having buy-in, 100% buy-in at all times. There are 1 seeds and higher seeds who come into this tournament and treat that first game as something like a glorified scrimmage, getting their feet underneath them. You're generally playing a lesser team, and UConn's going to have that in Stetson. I do think Stetson's backcourt is a little bit dangerous, and we'll touch on them in a little bit. But knowing that down the road you have potentially an FAU team that made the Final Four last year, or a Northwestern team where Boo Buie is one of the better guards in the country, right? And then there's either San Diego State, if Becker plays out right, who was also in the Final Four last year, or an Auburn team that just won the SEC Tournament Championship and has been a top 10 team on KenPom all season long. You have to be locked in. You have to be at your best, and there can be no let up. And for a UConn team that has already been that throughout the course of the season, right? Their goal for the year was to sweep the Big East championships they did not win last year. They did that. They don't have the opportunity to take a deep breath and then try and ramp back up. And I think that's the good part, is you get to keep that same mindset of being locked in and stay as driven as possible.
No, it's not any fun to pick UConn. They're the #1 overall seed. But here's the thing. There have been 37 #1 seeds to reach the championship game in the NCAA tournament in the last 38 years. I'm not the best at math, but that's 1 a year. One of these teams that's a #1 seed is going to be in the title game. And history also tells us they've got a really good chance of winning. 24 of the last 38 national champions were 1 seeds. 12 of the last 16 were 1 seed. So yes, they have the group of death, but they've also been the best team in college basketball all season. They have an inside-outside game that is better than anyone else in the country. They can bang with big bodies, they can rebound, but they can also shoot, they can score. And when they want to defend, they can get into you and they can defend. They have been the most complete team in the league in college basketball this season. And if one of these #1 seeds is going to win, and there have been 3 of the 4 1 seeds have been head and shoulders above everyone else, UConn, Houston, and Purdue. Purdue looked pretty vulnerable in the Big Ten tournament against Wisconsin. UConn has really not looked vulnerable when they've been healthy all season. A #1 seed is probably going to win. History tells us that. The best 1 seed? Sorry, it's not exciting. It's UConn. And finally, it was all because of a sandwich. Okay, maybe it wasn't, but a Jets fan sent a New Jersey delicacy to the Jets facility ahead of Mike Williams' visit. It was a Taylor ham, egg, and cheese sandwich, also known locally as a pork roll. The Jets social media team leaned into the bit, and the Jets must have just let this sandwich be delivered to the team facility to Mike Williams. They had Mike Williams try the sandwich on camera after signing his deal. And if you're wondering, yes, he liked it. It's delicious. And in case anyone else was wondering, I can also be recruited with breakfast sandwiches. As you know, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel, Locked On Sports Today. Baseball fans, mark your calendar for March 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern for the best Major League Baseball season preview, coming exclusively to Locked On Sports Today. On March 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern, be the first to get local insight from the MLB local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Find it on March 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern on the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Coming up on the next Locked On Sports Today, will any team not named the Dodgers win the World Series this year? We're going to talk about baseball in March. So at least until tomorrow, stay locked on sports today.
Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
For more episodes of Locked On Sports Today, go to our video on demand. Click on Sports at the top of your screen. There, you'll find past episodes of Locked On Sports Today, plus other Locked On shows on demand.